and Lasya aspects put together. And so we would be having this session a look at the repertoire, the technique part of it, the history, when it comes to history, the origin, the patronage, and all these. So this is meant for the certificate program in performing arts, CPABN, and this is part of your ODN 001. Manipuri, history and technique. When we talk about the introduction of this dance form, as we know that this is a part from the north, far northeast, it was called the frontier states, one of the frontier states, one of the seven sister states of India. And as the name suggests, it is called the land of the jewels, Mani. Mani meaning jewels or the pearls, the land of pearls. So it was called because legend has it that one of the kings obtained a pearl or a very precious gem from the Naga kings. So that and then it was maintained and given a new name called Manipur. So this dance has different traditions. One is from the Meitei tradition and then from the later Vaishnavite tradition. We have an intermingling of two traditions, and from the repertoire of this dance form we can see that enough space has been given to both the traditions. And over time, due to patronage by the Vaishnavite kings, the shift to the Vaishnavite base happened, and therein rose the rasas, the beautiful rasa leelas of the Manipuri tradition. So this shows that there are a number of communities, the diverse communities, and the importance to each community and importance that dance and music has held in such a vibrant society. The history of Meitei population shows that they have this concept called Sanamahism, which is a polytheistic religion which has many gods and godheads and goddesses. So their text called Puya, which talks about their history, their religious beliefs, their themes, the stories related to it, and the historical events, the importance given to dance and music in their society. All these were written down in this text called Puya, which is their religious text and historical evidence also. And then this shows about the historical tradition of the Meitei community, the Sanamahism, which gave importance to nature and the gods related to natural elements. So we have this concept, very different concept called Pankambha, from where they have derived the structure of an S, and that is used in the Manipuri dance tradition, the use of the torso, which emulates the structure of S, which goes like an S or an 8 figure in the Nritta part of the Manipuri dance. This concept was also, if you remember, we had talked about this in this southern tradition of Mohiniyattam, which also has an Atibhanga torso movement, which goes in a serpentile fashion. So though the feet position is in a bent feet position in a mandala, an opened up position, thereby it gives an Atibhanga movement to the torso. But here the Manipuri tradition uses mostly the sama and the use of the kunchita and the anchita pada in the standing position. The torso, the serpentile movement of the torso doesn't give much emphasis as compared to Mohiniyattam. So here we can see the elements of the technique part also, and the influence of the Pankamba, the serpentile, the intertwined serpent in its dance tradition. Here from the 15th century onwards, we see a shift to the Vaishnavism, where it has spread from the area of Bengal, and then later on in the 18th century, they consolidated their stance here in this part of the Indian subcontinent, wherein the royal patronage itself was given enormously, and it was asked for the Meitei community to shift to Vaishnavism. Thereby a lot of people converted to Vaishnavism, but then when you see the traditions, it has used a right mix of Meitei and the Vaishnavite it survived, and in fact we can see it's affecting the dance tradition also. when you look at the history of the dance, we have seen the origin. Now let us look at the patronage at different times. We saw that in 15th century there was an influence of the Vaishnavism from the Bengal. Now in the 18th century they consolidated their position, and so who were these kings who brought this into force? King Panheba, he was also known as Garib Niwas, or better known as Garib Niwas. And then he was in the early 18th century. And then you have King Bhagyachandra. There is another king also, Chandrakirti. So there are quite a number of kings who have contributed, who are well versed in arts, who also composed many items of the repertoire, who also wrote many texts, who were equally good in Manipuri and Sanskrit, and so had this very good exposure to all the religious elements and the artistic elements of their times. And they encouraged and gave patronage to the dancers. So dance was part of the rituals. It was also part of the royal tradition, royal performance. So here we have not only royal, but then every household in Manipur used dance and songs as part of their living tradition. Any event in life was music and dance was part of any occasion in life, be it the birth ceremony or the naming ceremony or some get together, and even it went on till death. So there were many events in which many traditions of music and dance was involved. So here we have this tradition of Vaishnavism coming in, and then thereby there are new elements which like Sankirtana and Ras which have come in. If we look at the first performance of Rasa Leela, it was dedicated to Sri Govindaji, and that was a temple which was built for the first time, and it's at it in installation in 1779 in the royal precincts of the royal palace. This Rasa Leela was performed, and the first Rasa Leela was the Maharas. Maharas was performed on the full moon night of Kartika. So it seems that the princess of the royal palace participated as Radha. So there it shows the importance that dance held, and it's ritualistic and the artistic elements, and the way people mingle together to showcase a dance form which they found it to be a part and parcel of their life. So we have other rasas also which were developed over time. We have Maharasa, which was performed first, and then Kunjarasa, Vasantarasa, which were compositions, as I told you, by Bhagyachandra Raja. So Bhagyachandra was a prominent person who composed many rasas also. These rasas were obviously part of the Bhagavata Purana. And then we have other traditions, storytelling traditions also, Vari Liba, storytelling from Ramayana and Mahabharata. And then there are other lyric Tiba Haiba, which was a narration and translation of the Hindu scriptures. So what they did here was, when there's Vaishnavism, and then so these major tradition, the major epics were translated into Manipuri so that the common folk could get to understand the concepts, the stories, the legends, and then they could also appreciate a different kind of a culture that was coming in. So there was also contribution by the patronage by the kings at that time. And then again Raja Bhagyachandra also wrote Govinda Sangita Leela Vilas. This is considered to be a standard work on Manipuri. Then another king, Chandrakirti, who followed him in the late in the 19th century. He was a very good exponent of Mridanga, and there he wrote Mridanga Sangraha. So that was on the art of playing drum, that was called khol in Manipuri, in the Manipuri drum called khol. There are different kinds of percussion instrument in Manipuri. If you see Nata Sankirtan, there is a large usage of poong. Poong is a percussion instrument, and likewise there are use of cymbals, the brass metal, and then there is khol also. And then in Laiharoba, if you see, there is usage of the string instrument called Peena, which is especially used in Laiharoba and not in the Rasa Leela tradition. And there are other instruments like conch and the drums which are used in Rasa Leela. So here, as you see, he composed at least 64 Pung Choloms, drum dances. Pung Choloms are considered to be part of the Rasa Leela also, but then a larger part of the Nata Sankirtan tradition. And the Lasya Parangs are phrases. Parangs are phrases. So Vrindavani Bhangi Parang and Kurumba Bhangi Parang. So these are the names of the phrases, cadences, wherein if we can compare it with the another tradition of Bharatanatyam, the parangs may be equivalent to the chollikattas or the core-wise. So this is how it was made. So there are set patterns of parangs which are used for different items. And then Bhagya Chandrakirti is also credited for having composed two different rasas called Nitya Rasa and Gopa Rasa. Like we have seen how Maharasa, Vasantarasa and Kunjarasa, and now we see two different rasas called Nitya Rasa and Gopa Rasa. Now let us go into some of these terminology that we dealt with here. Parangs, there is Chali, there is, and there are different kinds of talas. So what does it encompass? What are the concepts of Nritta, wherein we have these different terminology? In general, Manipuri dances are called Jagoi. So it's a Jagoi, Manipuri Jagoi. And the music is called Meitei Jagoi music. So Meitei is their language and Jagoi is for dance, and then it is the dance music of the Manipuris. Nritta or the abstract dance is called the Pung Lol Jagoi. Pung Lol Jagoi. Here in Manipuri we have two things, two kinds of movements, Tandava and Lasya. And mostly the Tandava has, have vigorous dances, and then Lasya has more gentler. It doesn't mean that the men do Tandava and women do Lasya. But then and the tradition has it that the men have been handling the drums, the pung. So it has been this tradition that the Tandava, the more vigorous form, has been performed. But there are many instances of women dancers also taking up the drum dancing, the pung dancing. And so we have the flow and the grace in the Lasya, which is marked by the soft, curvilinear, fluid moves that dissolve into one another move. As we saw, the serpentine moves of the figure of the 8, the intertwined serpent, is what is shown in most of the movements of the Lasya. And if we look at the tala patterns which are used in the Nritta, this is more in the aspect of Nritta. So we have different types called Rajmela of 7 beats, Rupaka, which is also called Rupaka. Then we have 15 beats Pancham Swari, and then 16 beats Teen Tala. In Nata Sankirtana tradition, there is a slight difference from the Rasalila. So we have Menkoop, and then Sadhim Rajmela, it may be of 7 or 14 beats, and then Chali. So this being the concept of Nritta, we can easily shift to the technical dance, because Nritta is what consists of the technical dancing. So there are two things, which is one is expressional dancing, the other one is technical dancing. Here, when you look at technical dancing, we also discussed about Bhangi Parang. So let us see what are the other elements which are the basic units, and those basic units which form the Bhangi Parang. Chali is one of the basic series of movement. Again, it is a series of movement like in Adavu. Chali is one of the basic series of movement, and it consists of walking and covering the floor space. And in this we have Longley and Uplay. Longley these are also Chalis wherein they cover the floor space but in different ways. So here then they are executed in multiples of 3. Though they are adavus, when they are executed in multiples of 3, if you remember, if you go back to the tradition of Bharatanatyam, there are instances where you do certain adavus in multiples of 3, and that is called Tirmana adavu. So this Longley and Uplay are almost equivalent, similar to these terms called Tirmanam in the southern tradition. So we have chalis, we have long lays, we have uplays, bhangi parang, which is a longer composition like a chollukattu, or even probably more than that, with a series of body movements, both lasya and tandava. And then we have in rasa, as it is mostly lasya oriented pieces, even Krishna doesn't do more of a vigorous dancing, more of tandava, though very limitedly. More of the lasya element predominates in the rasa tradition. So we have bhangi parang, achongba, vrindavan parang, kurumba parang, and these are the lasya ones which we can see in the rasa dances. If you look at the Poong and the Kartal Cholum, which have very vigorous kinds of dancing, there we see in Goshta Bhangi Parang and then Goshta Vrindavan Parang. There's sometimes when compositions around in areas where episodes of Vrindavan or the Krishna dancing with the Gopas. So therein we have Goshta Vrindavan Parang and then Goshta Kurumba Parang. These are instances wherein Tandava ones are used, Tandava cadences are used, and these are called Tandava Parangs, Bhangi Parangs, which are on Tandava in nature. So if you have, if we can have a look at the serpentine figure, which I was referring to, which is mostly used in the torso, by the torso, Ati Bhanga position, in the Manipuri dance Nritta portions. This image which we can see below, the first one is the Sanamahist temple, the one on the left, the top left, and the one below is the Pankhamba, which is the intertwined serpent. This is depicted in different ways in different culture. So this is one of the images from the Manipuri tradition, which is also depicted in many different ways. So this holds a very good, a very important place in their tradition, and so it is used in their dance form too. So when we are looking at the repertoire, when we have covered some areas where the dancing was prevalent in the Meitei society, where Sanamahism was more prominent, and then therein came the elements of Vaishnavic influences, and then there were new items and new dance forms which came in, which were composed, and so we have seen both the traditions coming here. And the repertoire, Manipuri repertoire, is something that has given place to both the Meitei and the Vaishnavic, as we have seen. So it starts with one aspect of one tradition of the Meitei called the Lai Haroba. It also includes, the arrangement of the repertoire may change, but then this is also an important component. It has been made part of the repertoire of Manipuri. Lai Haroba. Lai Haroba means festivity of gods. So this gods, there were many gods and godheads and goddesses, and there used to be a time when they showed their in fact praised the gods and invited them to the land and gave them offerings. So that was a time, April, May, those were the times which were considered auspicious, and people came together for this important occasion called Lai Haroba. So here we have Lai Haroba translated as the festivity of gods. So through dance and gestures, so they did have gestures, they did have dance movements, and they depicted, what did they depict? They depicted the beginning of mankind. They had a godhead, and it was supposed that they believed that the earth came up in a different way. They prayed to their protector called Atiya Siddhaba, and it seems that at one point of time he was in a dark room and he saw a rainbow coming across, and thereby the story goes. So this Lai Haroba is a celebration of that incident, and also the story that they believed in for generations together. It talks about how the creation of man. They depict the child's growing up stages, and then later on how the child engages himself or herself in the building of a house, cultivation of land, and weaving and continuity of human life, their social life, their cultural life, and all that is depicted in this in a ritualistic mode. So this event, the Laibaroba, is a very ritualistic dance, and it takes place normally for 3 to 5 days in the temple premises. But then when it's made part of the repertoire, then there are many changes made. But then the essence of it remains the same. So this is in praise of the deities. And the Maibis and the Maibas. Maibis is the priestesses, priests, Maibas. They lead this group of dancers, and there is no restriction for anyone to come forward, and anyone and everyone can come and then dance. The group may consist of people, women, men, and then children also who are dressed in their traditional costumes. They become very part and parcel of this whole aspect of Laiharoba. That is the beauty of this, how the community comes closer, and then for this one occasion where they pray gods. So the Maiba and the Maibi lead the group of performers, and they are dressed in white. As you can see the image on the right, where these are the Maibas and the Maibis, and they have certain props also which are held as the procession goes ahead. So here we have traditional horizontal striped dresses called the fanek. These are the picture. This is a picture of the Maiba and especially the Maibis. So they are dressed totally in white, and we have men and boys again having a dark velvet. If you have a look at the image which follows, this is the fanek, which is striped cloth, and then the traditional velvet blouse. It may be of any dark color, which is worn by the women. The similar one is also worn by the men. But they wear a dhoti in a different fashion, and then they usually wear and they also wear a top blouse or a jacket, and then they are decorated by a turban with a tuft of peacock feathers. So that is the costume of the men. Even children join this, and this instrument called pina is a very special instrument, and this is what and this is a string instrument, and this is played during Laiharoba, this dance form of Laiharoba. So and it is made of coconut shell and bamboo, and they also have a string of gungrus which are brought together at the end of one of the part of the instrument. So the pina player is part of the procession here. So we also will be looking at this repertoire, part of the repertoire called wherein comes the Rasa Leela, and then the beats of the drum, which are play a very prominent role in this tradition. The Pung and the Cholam and the Kartal Cholam, which is more in the Nata Sankirtan.
We wear clothes on a daily basis. But have we ever wondered, where do our clothes come from? Who makes our clothing? And who are the people and the process responsible for the whole manufacturing of our clothing. If you want to know more about this, Indira Gandhi National Open University from the School of Continuing Education has launched a program which is Certificate in Apparel Merchandising. There are many benefits after doing this program. You can become a designer in various fields. It can be fashion designer, apparel designer, costume designer, or even a textile designer. One can also work as a fashion consultant. Research and development is another field which one can take up after doing this certificate course. Going into academics is another perk after doing this program. Getting into fashion houses or fashion studios as an intern is also a very good option post doing the certificate in apparel merchandising. The basic eligibility of the program is 10+2. The duration of the program is 6 months to 2 years. The program is also available for both the admission cycles, which is July and January. The exams are conducted twice a year, in June and December. So what are you waiting for? Join this program and get an enriching knowledge in the field of apparel merchandising. And to do so, you can log on to the official website of the university, www.ignou.ac.in.
We were looking at how the repertoire has been formulated, and then the influences of history, the influences of different kings on the repertoire, the different technical elements of nritta, and then what are the themes that have come in over time, and we have started looking at the repertoire. We looked at the concept of and the tradition of Lai Haroba, wherein Methi tradition of the creation of man and its very different facets come into the performance space, and how it is depicted as a ritual and as a performance. Now we will be shifting our focus to an important part of the Manipuri dance tradition called Rasa Leela. As we have already seen, there were 2-3 kings who contributed a lot, and there was one of the King Bhagyachandra, and the story goes that he dreamt about the costume of Manipuri dance, and it is in his dream that the Manipuri dancers swirled in the phonics, swirled in the kumils, and thereby he created this beautiful, wonderful, unique costume of the Manipuri, which is not really seen in any other tradition. So if we look at this tradition of Rasa Leela, we have elements coming in from the stories of Bhagavata Purana, and then Bhakti literature of Gita Govinda, Jayadeva's Gita Govinda, and Govinda Leela Amrita. So Bhakti Rasa is that which predominates in the Rasa. In the Rasa Leela, there are narratives and sequences which are mostly from these epics. So mostly from the epic of Mahabharata. And then this is what kind of a bhakti is what that it conveys. It is something called Madhura Bhakti. Madhura Bhakti is a tradition which started with the Bhakti tradition. Popularization of the Bhakti tradition happened with the inculcation of this concept and this called Madhura Bhakti. Bhakti through love. Love where the Nayaka or Nayika, the devotee considers himself as a Nayika, and then longs for union with the God. So it is love towards God in any form that shows, that is that a devotee shows through song or through dance or through literature, that was considered to be Madhura Bhakti. And these forms of dances, Rasalila and Nata Sankirtan, and all these dance forms and music forms also portrayed Bhakti through Madhura Bhakti. So wherein we have different kinds of ras, Maharas, as we already have seen here, Maharas, and then there are other ras leelas called Vasantaras, Kunjaras, Nityaras, Goparas and Ulukal ras. Now let us get into some details about what these ras are and how are they different from each other. Maharas, as we have discussed earlier, it was performed on Kartik Purnima, and it was performed on the consecration of the Govindji temple within the precincts of the royal palace. And here we have the story where Krishna manifests into many forms when he dances with the many gopis, and there we can see Krishna with each of the gopis, and there it happens on a full moon night of Kartik Purnima. This event is performed as Maharas. The Maharas, the dance in the circle of life, the circle with each gopi and the dance with each gopi, that beautifully portrays the concept of Madhura Bhakti. And then we have this Vasantaras also, which happens which also portrays these Abher Kel, the play of the colors during Holi. This happens during the Holi, March, and with the onset of spring. So there we have Vasantaras, which celebrates spring. You might have seen this image in many of the Mughal or the miniature, Rajasthani miniature paintings. Wherein also this concept of dancing in the round is also there. So this is a major part of the Vasantaras. There is another ras called Kunjaras. Kunja is a bower. So wherein in Rakhi Purnima, performed during the Rakhi Purnima, it revolves around the game of the hide and seek. Kunj is a bower. So here we have hide and seek between the gopis, sometimes between Krishna. So therein is a play between the Krishna and the gopis and Radha. So this is depicted in Kunjaras, and these three were compositions by Maharaja Bhagyachandra. And Nitya Ras is about again Radhas and gopis attracted to the music of Krishna's flute. This happens like every day for them. So this is called Nitya Ras. This is a ras that is that embodies the Krishna, yearning for Krishna through the flute music of Krishna. The gopis and Radha are yearning for to see Krishna and to be with Krishna. So this is the concept of Nitya Ras. And then Goparas concept. Herein we have Gopas coming in, and then there is a lot of vigorous moves and a lot of Tandava and a lot of play element coming in. Exploits of Krishna and the Gopas are seen in Goparas. And so does Ulukal Ras, which also has concepts of childhood pranks of Krishna stealing butter, breaking pots of curd, and so on and so forth. So this encompasses the many themes and the concepts which are used in Ras. And now look at if we look at the costume of the Ras also, as the female costume is called the Potloi. The Kumils are the circular drums, and the color worn by Radha is different from those worn by gopis. So that shows the difference between both of them. They have a wheel on top of their head, and then they have a and then Krishna is also in his finery. His costume is called Nataravesh, and there are many different elements which have technical names for them, and so very delicate and very beautifully crafted elements are in part of their costume, and very unique indeed. And we have here accompanying music is by two sutradharis who also keep time, and with the cymbals, and two drummers, and a flute and a conch player. So this is a bare minimum of the aspects which covers the costume and the instruments of Manipuri Rasalila. If you look at the repertoire of Nata Sankirtana, here we have Nata Sankirtana. Earlier it was called Sankirtana, and then it came to be known as Aribapala, and then it came to be called as Nata Sankirtan when the elements of dance also came into the performance space. Sankirtana is a form of community worship, meaning chanting and the singing of glories of God. In the 15th century, if you go back to the history of Manipuri dance tradition, if you remember, we discussed in the 15th century there was this tradition of Hari Sankirtana. So this is a form which came in much before the Rasalila tradition. So it is, yes, it is later on. Laiharoba is much earlier, but before Rasalila tradition we have Hari Sankirtan, which is a musical form of rendition of the Sankirtan. So there we have singing of the glories of the God, that is before the period of Garib Niwas itself. So this Kirtan then came to be known as Aribapala, which came to be later known as the Nata Sankirtan when elements of dance began to be incorporated into the singing style. So it consists of dance with the drums and the cymbals, where the performer or the devotee simultaneously plays the instrument. It may not be a performer, it may not happen on the stage, because this dance form is part and parcel of their life. It is part of their naming ceremony also, it is part of their child's annaprasham also, and many events in so the devotee himself performs this. So this kind of a ritual is part of their daily social life, daily cultural life. So they sing bhava-laden songs to evoke bhakti and dance in abstract. It is mostly in nritta element, but with the music of the cymbals and the beats of the percussion instrument. But the nritta is of a definitive pattern of movement, and which is again similar in the Pung, much more vigorous in the Pung and the Karatala Cholums. So the performers of Nata Sankirtan narrate the life and the deeds of Krishna through their song and dance. And they feel the analogy of their life, and they feel inspired to have and give their offerings to the Lord. And then that is how the social life is something which is very much intermixed with the cultural life and the religious life. It finds its expression through two principal dances called the Cholums, the Pung and the Karatala. The Tala is maintained by the hand. The cymbals, which are held by the hands, maintain the Tala. That is what is meant by Karatala, the metallic metal cymbals. So the Pung is a percussion instrument. So the long drums, which are used both in Rasalila also. So the sequences of Nata Sankirtan starts, it is very standardized. It also has a Purvaranga, and then that has a puja, Mandali puja, Purvaranga, as we have seen in other traditions. This also does have a Purvaranga tradition, and then that includes a Mandali puja, and then followed by alternate singing, drumming, and then comes in the nritta elements, the drumming and the playing of the Karatala. Then proceeds the metrical patterns. So the Pung, the Pung itself has so many patterns which are developed and performed. So we have seen the contribution of Raja Chandrakirti, wherein he brought in 60 varieties of playing Pung. So there are many varieties in which the Pung is played. If you look at the Pung, this is the Pung, which is a long barrel drum, and the players are again in their white costume, long flowing robes with a turban. So this is what is, when it comes to the stage, the performance space is much more larger and the movements become much more vigorous. So the elements of dance is more focused here. When the space is limited to an environment of a home or a temple, the elements of dance or the Tandava aspect is much more subdued, as we have seen in the earlier slide. So therein we have the ritualistic component, which takes in much of an more importance than when it comes to the performance space. So this has shown you the three aspects of the repertoire, wherein we have seen the elements of Laiharoba, wherein we have seen some aspects of Rasa Leela. In fact, a huge repertoire of Rasa Leela. There are many different kinds of rasas. And then we have elements of Nata Sankirtan, wherein the dance with the Poong and the Kartal come in. And apart from this, there are, as Manipuris sing and dance throughout their life, there are many different dances. There are dances called the Nupi Pala, which is done by the women folk who clap and then dance in praise of Lord Jagannath during his Rath Yatra. And then similarly, there are away from the Vaishnavite tradition, if you look at the tribal tradition, there are many dance forms which have a huge variety. There are harvest dances, there are war dances, there are dances which celebrate the youth. So Manipuri dances are many, and their songs are also many more. So we have a rich culture, but we have the space here has been restricted to the classical dance forms, and so we have seen how these dance forms from different tradition during different periods of time have come together to form the repertoire of this beautiful tradition called the Manipuri dance tradition. There are, as I told you, there are many number of tribal dance forms also, which have a diverse variety and which have an equally important role in sustaining their traditional culture and the religion and the aspects of their ethnographic, ethnographically important areas of their life sustenance, the principles of and the elements of the tradition that they have been carrying on. So in a whole, we have seen this tradition, and we look at every state and every part of India, and sometimes we derive classical dance forms, sometimes we do have traditional dance form in the form of tribal or folk dances. So it has been an amalgamation of all this together that has brought in the culture to a very important stage at this time, and probably at a later time we may discuss some things about the tribal and the folk aspects of Manipuri as well, though we have seen very important concepts of the Sanamahism and the Pankamba and the stories related to this. One thing that I did miss from this part is this concept of Khamba Toibi. Khamba Toibi is one story which links the characters called Khamba and Toibi. They are lovers and they get united. They are from different families, one from the princely family, another a commoner, or some from a family of a chieftain. But their union is opposed by the family members, but somehow they come together. But then theirs is not a very happy ending. Theirs is a tragical ending. Both of them pass away, and but then what is the importance is that in Moirang Parba their story is told. So this is also part of Laiharoba. Laiharoba is practiced in different parts of Manipur in different ways. So the story of Khamba Toibi is also done in this Moirang Parba. Why it is because of the importance of the ununited lovers, but also because they were very good in performing this tradition called Laiharoba. So I do hope that you have got a very good view of the artistic elements of this dance forms, all these dance forms, and also their tradition. The very many very diverse traditions have come in from, and that would help you look at the traditions, dance traditions of Manipur in a very analytical way. And we do hope to meet in the coming sessions where we would be discussing other classical dance forms, Kathakali, Mohiniyattam, Kathak, Odissi, and so on. Thank you.
Hello learners, in this program I will discuss about physical properties of minerals. Physical properties of minerals, they depend upon light, state of aggregation, specific gravity, senses, forces. First I will discuss about the characters based on light. The most important property of mineral is color, luster, streak, transparency and luminescence. These are the 5 important properties which are solely based on light. First I will take up color. Color of a mineral is easily observed and instantly evaluated. It is important property of mineral, but in several minerals it is one of the most vulnerable or changeable, unreliable property. So it can be considered as a very important property in case of certain minerals which I have tabulated here. First, black color. Black colored minerals are tourmaline, magnetite, ilmenite, hornblende, agate, biotite and pyrolusite, whereas dark green color minerals are